The-nosleep-conspiracy. I, along with many of you, have spent many hours in this subreddit. We have breathlessly waited for updates, have run screaming from the room yelling nope, nope, nope. Some have cried, and some have had memories flood back to us, and some have had primal fears touched. In the end, we tell ourselves it didn't happen to us, it's only an internet board. Ask yourself though, what if there is something far more sinister beneath the surface? Think of how you first came here, perhaps someone linked you, or you stumbled across it looking for a scary story. At first it was fun with the occasional story that creeped you out, but in the end nothing too traumatic. Then as time goes on and you keep coming back, certain things begin to change as you find yourself more and more drawn in. The posts become ever more real, you start sleeping with your lights on, or perhaps you ensure that door you never lock is locked 2 or 3 times a night. A fear starts to grow inside of you that you try to dispel with logic, reasoning, or perhaps you put on your happy music or cuddle your pet. You pull your blankets all the way up on the bed away from the empty space below, for warmth just in case you wake up cold in night, of course. You stay up ever later, oftentimes not going to bed until 3 a.m. or even later. It never clicks in your head that this is the witching hour, and that most your fears begin to manifest more truly during these times. How many times has an odd coincidence happened as you are reading a story, then with near perfect timing, you knocked a plug out from a lamp or your computer? Maybe it's a noise from the house or your pet going crazy or sneaking up behind you for some suddenly needed attention. As time goes on, even more coincidences begin to happen. You briefly glimpse a shadow from the corner of your eye, or you aren't sure whether you closed that closet, but they are only stories, right? That rule is just to make us enjoy the postings more, it has to be. Then to prove your braveness and the folly of such worries, you return for more. You brush off those sounds and cite as your overactive imagination. Even when inside of you resides the knowledge that your house couldn't have made this many sounds before, the creaks and footstep-like sounds were always there, we just never paid attention to them, the presence we feel behind us isn't there, and that reflection we saw in the window was just your mind changing some ordinary object into something it is not. This, my friends, is where the conspiracy begins. It manifests in many ways. Some people perhaps go to their doctor for sleeping pills, not mentioning why it is they have trouble sleeping. Some latent hypochondriacs begin to feel the symptoms of some of the posts, maybe the sleepwalking, the hallucinations. More and more we find ourselves becoming increasingly drawn to this board and shutting out the outside world. Our fears grow, our imaginations run wild, and yet we never talk much about the side effects. Maybe we bring in more friends and show them this subreddit, and of course they become hooked. It is ever growing as the sub numbers slowly but surely always climb. And with every new reader, more new stories and accounts pop up to swell our numbers, only furthering the fears and deterioration of our mental state. And those fears begin to manifest ever more clearly in our physical world. Some of us see the shadows during the day now, during our safe times, and the steps we took to ensure our safety seem to be less and less effective. We know of beings that feed on fear, be they paranormal or physical. Think of the increase in stories from recent times, the events that have happened and grow since this sub opened. How many of them can we truly explain away? Who's to say if a person perhaps selected you as a user of this Reddit, has tracked you down, and is now purposely creating these noises and brief flashes out of the corner of your eye to drive you further into madness, knowing that eventually it will be time to strike? Think of all the non-paranormal stories that have become increasingly prevalent as of late. We know it can happen. We know of the people that can slip in while we sleep or are away. Why is it you hear these noises or your pet suddenly acts up? What causes that presence you feel behind you or that brief reflection in the window before it moves out of sight? Do you truly know if this time the story may be happening to you, that someone is indeed inside, or do you just try to explain it away as you do most the forum, telling yourself it is all in your mind, while never truly knowing how close you may be from someone that watches as you sleep? Then there is the other side, the side that isn't physical. As I said, there are beings that manifest from fear, and think of how strongly we have all been feeding into it. We read the same stories, and see and hear the same things, feel the same fears. This board acts as a magnifying glass, concentrating the same fears tens of thousands of times over. We always grow larger, always pull more people in. How many people have disappeared from here after being completely active with no explanation? What truly cause our ever-growing paranoia and need to share it with others? The same fear that causes us to spend ever more time in here trying to fight it in our minds and prove our bravado, that causes us to bring in friends and have them join to prove our lack of fear, that causes us to avoid the outside world. If there is a being made manifest that preys upon our fears, then it is too late. Even those that attempt to debunk are losing their battle. How many times can we attribute mental illness to an ever-growing percentage of people, and to those that cling to carbon monoxide poisoning? Why the sudden spike? And if this is true, imagine how many of us are slowly being poisoned to death as we speak, our mind ever more fevered with hallucinations. In the end, while we hope, pray, or even try to reason it away, a part of us knows that presence we feel is actually there. That shadow or reflection we caught in the corner of our eyes is real, and that there were never truly that many sounds in our house before. We know that it makes itself more known and that someday soon, it will come for us.